Howdy and welcome to Barrel Hitch Trading. This is Foundations, Episode 3, and today I'm talking about something that sits right at the center of every real trading journey. It certainly has for mine, the architecture of a repeatable system. Not a fancy or intricate system, not complex, well, not simple for that matter, but a repeatable system, right? Ideally also a repeatable system with a positive and high EV, right? I don't want it to be repeatable with a negative expected value. But a system is only real when it behaves the same way tomorrow that it did yesterday, today that it does both of those. Most people think a system is something you write down, but writing is cheap and execution is what makes it real. And execution only works when the architecture underneath is stable. A repeatable system is a shield against me on my worst days. It doesn't have to make me perfect, it just has to keep my human variability from blowing up the probabilities. And when I say human variability, I mean the exact thing we talked about in episode 2, the gap between correct and incorrect that widens when I'm tired, stressed, bored, overconfident, distracted, emotional, hungry, whatever, undercaffeinated. And look, as I said before, human's gonna human, and I will too. And you can hear that in my voice through the episodes. You get however I'm feeling at the moment, right? It's all me, but I just think out loud, right? So enjoy it. but you can hear that variability, right? That human wobble. And the whole point of an architecture, a system, is to give that human wobbling a place to settle in comfortably and effectively. So what makes my system repeatable, or any system? Repeatable, mind you, not profitable, not clever, not elegant, but repeatable, right? Like I said, I don't want a repeatable system if it's not profitable with a positive expected value. But what we're looking at here, what I'm talking about, is what does then take it and make it repeatable. Repeatability depends on architecture, right? So it's the system that I put in place, the shape of it, the rules of it that stay the same even when I don't. So every repeatable system that I've ever seen or built or tried to execute or operate has three main pieces holding it up. That's clarity, necessity, and boundedness. Any one of those three missing, at least in my experience, the whole thing is going to produce what we refer to as drift, expectancy change, execution change that causes the expectancy change on a trade. So clarity, if I can't describe the rule in one sentence, right? It's the Feynman principle. I can't understand it simply. Frankly, it means I don't understand it at all if I can't describe it simply, and it means I won't execute it in a second or a fraction of a second like I need to be effective with my makeup. Clarity is understanding, which results in speed, which results in consistency, which is what keeps me from improvising when improvisation is costly, right? Improvisation is only okay when it's defined within that system, part of specifically an input that I'm looking for in the market structure as part of my trading system. So clarity is important. I need, for instance, I trade a second derivative inflection curve identification system. Lots of big words, but I look for the rate of change of the rate of change of the price action. That's what I see, that waveform and its curvature when it's changing. So that's clear. That is what I'm looking for. Now, whether I effectively identify and act upon it is part of that system and my execution. But that's the clarity you need. What is it that I'm looking for in the market structure? So my entries, the clarity there, are supposed to be at inflection points, and inflection points with, guardrails on the price action as well. That's why the EMAs and the VWAP are there for any of those that have looked at some of my T+1s, right? And yes, there's some instinct in there, but it's defined. How am I seeing the tick by tick, the price action up and down, particularly on exits? But anyway, clarity, what am I looking for? Second, necessity. Does it need to be a rule for my expected value to be high, predictable, whatever? Does it change the expectancy? If it doesn't, it shouldn't be in my system. It shouldn't be part of the architecture. It's easy, tempting to add rules because they feel safer with more structure. Hard stop losses, hard take profits, right? That have nothing to do with the market structure of the moment, nothing to do with the internal state, the variability of the human operator. So it's easy to have extra rules in there that don't necessarily need to be in there because they're not specified, adapted, designed for the market structure or the human variability, the system. Necessity means if that rule vanished tomorrow, would my results change? Would the expected value over time go down because the expected value of me went down? If that rule would not result in a lower expected value, and for sure, if removing that rule would result in a higher expected value, a higher EV of me, in the first case, it's not a rule, and in the second case, it's a really bad rule. In either way, it's clutter and it doesn't need to be there, right? It's something that adds no value at all, right? Efficiency of rule set, because the more that's on there, the more distractible that I am. Bells and whistles, as it were, if you're talking back in metaphors there. So things that are not fulcrums to the expected value. They don't increase leverage, anything like that, right? And the only way that I find those is by going back, and that's why I have a trading journal at all, is to go back and look. That's just what needs to be there. Anyway, if it's not a rule that's effective, it's clutter. Cut it. That's my rule. Keep things clean and effective. And then boundedness is one that is easy to underrate for me. Not only am I looking for curvature changes, what I need to do, I also need some rules on telling me what not to do, right? Go look at my T+1 episodes from last week. You'll see some doozy examples there. But one of the simple ones that is part of mine is I don't trade afternoon central. That's for a couple of reasons. One is market structure, right? But two is my effectiveness drops. That's partly why it's there. It's a rule because of both things. There's two reasons expected value of my system drops there, right? So that's why that rule is there. And it's easy to get lost on boundedness rules because market structure is variable, right? The whole idea is to do the same thing over time. Otherwise, your expected value can't resolve in the expected way, right? If your EV of me is wildly unpredictable, guess what? It's absolutely one of the biggest determining factors on the EV of a trading system, right? So market structure changes. That has to be part of my system rules, not a part of my intuition. So my system, if the market structure is doing something wacky that doesn't fit what I'm seeing, there's only one rule in my system that's applicable. Wait. When I start improvising, freestyling, that's not my trading system. That's randomness, it's clutter, it's noise. It is absolutely something that creates variability in the amplifications of my EV of me distribution, right? Those tails get real long, real quick. And that's not good. The tighter my EV of me distribution, then the more predictable my system output will be over time. So the whole point, right, of expected value is that if you repeat something enough times, the noise, the scatter, think of it analog versus digital, right? Analog, boom, 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 boom. You can, it's up, down, up, down. Well, that's what tick looks like, right? Any of you that pull up that chart. Boom, 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 boom. It's the actual moment by moment noise. The noise collapse is how analog turns into a digital waveform, right? And I realize it's binary, it's not like a sine waveform, but the transition or the translation between the two comes from, and in fact it does on analog to digital, it's applying the same rule the same way every time. Metronome, ice cold, execution. EV of me is high, EV of the system gets high because over time, in large populations, for you stats and probability people out there, that's how you get moderately predictable results instead of random noise. Markets are noisy. Market structure for sure is. Watch the tick for a second, like I said, and you'll see that. And I'm noisy, right? I have wild variability, as I've talked to some of you about in the past episodes, right? Neurodivergence is, it's a superpower and it cuts both ways. But a good system designed to handle the market structure and my internal structure as a human is a noise compressor. It is that translation from the analog to the digital. And in the long run is the only thing that matters. So I can have a perfectly correct trade that loses money. I can have a perfectly incorrect trade that makes money, but correctness repeated becomes a shape. It's the waveform, the distribution curve that the noise collapses into. That shape is what I can rely on. That's why EV of me needs to stay predictable. Notice I didn't even say peak. It needs to stay predictable as possible because that's where the EV of my trading system becomes as predictable as possible. I'll never be perfect. Well, none of us will, right? Probability speaking. But my system doesn't need perfection. It needs cooperation, consistency. My job's not to outperform it. It's to stay within it. That's architecture. That's why clear rules, necessary rules, bounded rules, executed by a variable human who accepts that and fits within it. That's why repeatability is so powerful. It forgives me for being a human. A repeatable system gives me something I can return to. It's the home base of trading. It's the shape under the randomness. And if I don't build it in a day, I build it by noticing what stays the same, because holy cow, the market will certainly teach me over time and strip away all the rules that aren't preserving expected value. And that is Foundations episode 3. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next episode.